Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and very soon the Abattoir of Zir. With its launch on December 5th, the event will last a total of 6 weeks, ending on January 23rd. We need to be prepared for that launch because it's said to be the hardest challenge in the game to date. We'll see how true that actually is. With that, a recent campfire chat happened and they finally showed us what the Blood Forges actually work like. Footage happened live where the senior community manager himself was playing for us while talking about what he's doing. Rich cleared a tier 1 Blood Forge and then attempted a tier 10 Blood Forge, which provided us with lots of new information and stuff to consider. We're going to go over that and talk about what it told us and update our expectations for what you'll need to do to actually be prepared, what to expect going in. So let's get started. With that new footage of tier 1 and 10 Blood Forges then, we've now learned that yes, these are essentially nightmare dungeons with only one objective within it. We knew that, right? It's to kill enough enemies to spawn the mini bosses all within 10 minutes. What's new about this information is that it means yes, it will work the same. It's going to be random negative affixes for you to deal with in that Blood Forge. You're just going in now without knowing what they are. You can actually avoid this kind of thing in a nightmare dungeon because you look at the sigil and go, nah, that's not for me. That negative affix is too much. I don't do those. So you just generate a new sigil and get one that's more better suited to your build. Here, we don't get to do that. Based on the footage and the way the devs spoke about it, you are going in fully blind, which means you're going to have to be prepared for all situations as best as possible. On top of that, the sigil powder. It's clear now it's going to be a huge wall. Just the cost of crafting a tier 1 and then a tier 2, 3 and then all the way up to a 25 and then include any failures where you lose the sigil, it's going to stack up big time. For example, a tier 1 Blood Forge will cost you 60,000 gold and 800 sigil powder, compared to a nightmare dungeon that you're crafting at the tiers 91 to 100 that costs 450 to craft, so it's nearly double for just the first sigil level. We've not seen if they're going to raise the cost as you craft higher Blood Forge tiers, and we can expect that, but hopefully they won't do it to us. We're also still blindly praying that they actually provide us with lots of sigil powder by doing and completing these forges, but I can imagine there'll be an oversight where they don't do that and it's going to be a problem. The footage shows the player in a defensive build, by the way, in which he is under committed to DPS to hard commit to defensive survivability. As it turns out, he's overkilled how much defense he ran in the tier 1, and to his defense, it's clear he didn't want to die in the live demo because that'd suck. However, while he was clearly under committed to DPS in that clear of the dungeon, when facing the boss spawns at the end, he nearly dies multiple times and runs himself down to just 3 potions left. So while there was, as I describe, user error during that final fight, the damage was clearly there despite a more defensive setup. But despite all that, it was very easily cleared, calmly within about 4:30 of the allotted 10 minutes. And something important to note is that this player didn't actually have the new Tears of Blood glyph equipped, which is crazy because it's the strongest glyph by far, the biggest DPS increase potential in the game. It is clear they intentionally didn't equip that glyph to show you a tier 1 was possible without it, and maybe to continue to hide just how impactful it actually is. I want you to understand that that glyph is going to be huge for everyone's DPS, and the more you level it, the more insane it's going to get. It's also interesting to talk about this. The moment the bar of progress was filled to actually get the bosses to spawn, all the mobs instantly despawned. The moment that bar was full, every enemy currently alive zipped out of existence. Then there was a few moments before the mini boss encounter actually began at the end of the dungeon, which we now know what it will be. It is literally 3 Bloodseekers all at once, which seem to come with 3 random affixes on each Bloodseeker. So in this case, we saw things like fear, poison, lightning, frost, and so on, all at once. But we didn't see suppressors, where the player at the time, the community manager, said out loud how relieved he was there wasn't one. So clearly it's random. Something we also saw during that fight was the fact that these aren't actual bosses, but mini bosses as I've been calling them. This means there's not going to be a stagger bar to build up. You can just instantly stun them, which means hard CC is going to be very effective against these bosses. Potentially, it will be required to kill them without being instantly killed yourself at the higher tiers, where maybe you're going to drop survivability to have enough damage. At the end of the Blood Forge though, just like a nightmare dungeon, you will get a safe zone bubble, and hey, that thing we use to upgrade our glyphs. For just this tier 1 clear, we were rewarded exactly 1000 glyph XP, which is huge. In a tier 100 nightmare dungeon right now, you'll enjoy roughly 200 XP for a clear, so that's 5 times the amount for a tier 1 Bloodforge. This means for leveling normal glyphs, it's going to be fantastic, so you won't have to worry about preparing your normal glyphs after all, though having said that, it might still be wiser to choose to grind out Nightmare Dungeon Glyph XP, even though it's a lot less than a Bloodforge, so that all of your Bloodforge XP gets going to that new glyph. Considering even level 1 to 2 required 2000 XP, and then as that went up to level 2, so we saw how much you need to get to level 3, that was 4600 XP. Hopefully the scaling XP rewarded for beating, say, a tier 2 Bloodforge will be relevant to that massive increase, because it's clear you're not always going to get those glyph totems that they've mentioned. As I said earlier, he wasn't actually using the new Tears of Blood glyph in this footage, and it's going to make a massive impact on your DPS. Something he also wasn't wearing in this footage was a single Uber Unique, though he had 2 in his inventory. It looked like that staff Uber and also a very casual, the best Uber Unique. Shaco's said helmet was fully upgraded, gemmed, and had packs on it, so it's clear he's been using it in his gameplay, but he chose not to use it in this footage. We don't know how far he's gone with the Bloodforges, but it says a lot that he had multiple of the amazing Uber Uniques sat there casually ready to go. In the second round, they attempted a tier 10, but not really. What I mean by that is he went in with barely any potions, having not refilled them after the last Bloodforge, and he didn't equip the unique glyph again or the Ubers that were sat in his inventory. He dropped 1 defensive aspect to slot into Pult's Will, which does give them a relevant DPS increase, but as you can see, made next to no difference. The sheer increase in enemy health compared to a tier 1 was staggering. Where the tier 1 felt like basically just a tier 101 Nightmare Dungeon, this looks like it's like a tier 140 or something of that level in terms of the raw numbers. The actual levels of the enemies didn't go up that much. They were level 157, so nowhere near as high as I was expecting. In any case, he had no chance at all within this tier 10, without enough damage to actually kill the enemies, and certainly not enough health potions to manage it. In the end, we're starting to think that tiers 20 plus may need people to commit to a full glass cannon build. Basically, you play perfectly, avoid damage entirely through raw distance and CC, but again, he never equipped the new unique glyph, the Tears of Blood, which is a colossal DPS increase, and it will make a massive difference. We would have loved to see the impact of that glyph being equipped, but honestly, based on their commentary, it seemed like he forgot to put it on rather than intentionally didn't. Anyway, with all these things learned and discussed, what should you do now with that information before it actually drops on December 5th? For one thing, make 100% sure you've got your season journey complete. Whatever that looks like, do the PvP stuff, do the Helltide challenge, the 12 world bosses, go kill Lilith, do what you need to do to get it done before the Bloodforges drop. It's going to really suck if it launches and you're there sat leveling your glyphs in Nightmare Dungeons instead of doing Bloodforges. Speaking of which, it's a reasonable choice to farm glyph XP right now to get your planned build ready. That planned build would ideally have 4 glyphs to level 21, so you're fully prepared. You might wonder why not 5? That's pretty standard on a level 100 build. Well, it's because one of those glyphs doesn't exist. You're going to slot in the new unique glyph Tears of Blood, which you don't have access to right now. That glyph is going to be the single greatest DPS increase you'll use. And be aware that the Tears of Blood glyph starts at level 1 but functions like a level 15 normal glyph. It has the same range extension as that and can actually be extended again beyond normal distances at level 50. We're going to level that glyph up to a max of apparently 200, though I'm not sure if it's reasonable to expect that based on the insane amount of XP required to level it. Again, hopefully the higher level Bloodforges will reward significantly more glyph XP than that tier 1 did, but we do have those RNG glyph totem drops, which drop a massive amount of glyph XP allegedly if you're lucky to get one. So it's up to you. Level your planned glyphs to 21 now, or just use that insanely good Bloodforge XP to do it after it launches. Just be aware that you will really want to level that new unique glyph with said XP. Another thing you might want to consider doing now then is farming out some sigil powder. As we saw, a tier 1 is going to cost you 60k gold and 800 sigil powder. We are praying that the higher tiers will give you sigil powder and a good amount of it, and that the higher tier sigils won't cost more to craft, but there's every chance it will. So it's possible you're going to need like a good 20k sigil powder or more to craft all the sigils you're going to need big picture. Honestly, you might need even more than that. One thing you can do right now is farm Uber Uniques. I know, that sucks. This basically just means farm Duriel as much as you can because the Uber Uniques will make a major difference. Survivability Ubers like Selig, Doombringer, and Shacos will potentially be required, at the highest tiers. And that's outside of the fact that most Ubers are going to increase your DPS by a lot too. It's looking more and more likely that you are going to need insane DPS as well as survivability, and Uber Uniques provide both in many cases. You're going to want a minimum of 70% element resistance in every element and aim for roughly 15,000 armor while in combat, meaning while disobedience is active, and those are some pretty high bare minimums to go for. Various Ubers are going to help you with exactly this stuff, so it is worth farming them if you can be bothered. One more thing you can do now though is, before it drops, gather the mats for some ideal elixirs, so you've got a nice stockpile. It'd be a good idea to have some strong defensive options like the raw armor one, or max health or whatever, but it's also a good idea to have a stock of ideal DPS ones too, depending on what it turns out you need most. So learn what potion you need to craft to have the most impact on your build and get a few of them. It's also going to be worth having some incense in there, which are a lot better in Season 2. Outside of that, just have the strongest DPS build you can get your hands on and make it as functional tanky as possible. You could even find yourself swapping gear during a run. Maybe you do like all the mob clear, and while the bosses are about to spawn, you swap on some single target or boss killing stuff like, I don't know, Godslayer Crown. There's a lot of discussion and build videos out there right now for this topic, and we've been making some here on the channel, so check them out. If you guys have learned anything else you think would be helpful to others to prepare, then you can drop it in the comments. But otherwise, I hope this video has helped you be prepared. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at this event launch.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.